Welcome back once again to Off Record On Point, the podcast that's all about workplace culture with a twist. I'm Julia Linehan, the founder and CEO of The Digital Voice.
And I'm Kasey Long. Today, we're joined by the amazing Gabrielle Persson, CPO at SeenThis. And as always, you can check the description for our usual list of resources to keep the conversation going. Here's a sneak preview of what's in store.
Internet as a whole stands for between 2 and 4% of the total emissions.
Wow.
So as a comparison, you have the entire aviation industry, which is 2%.
No way.
Just think you put yourself at risk either way if you're putting it out there publicly. Someone could always come along and say, well, that's not enough, or...
But you're a car manufacturer, or yeah.
Sustainability efforts were seen as cost and risk mitigation. Whereas of now, we see a paradigm shift in that it's actually more seen as a value creation.
Maybe it's going after some easy wins first, things you can do.
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit.
And that's where I think we see a lot of companies going now when we start coming into what actually matters, right? Which is taking actions and actually reducing their footprint.
Focus on actual reduction. Make it count and measure it and show what you've done.
Today, we're talking about the age of sustainability, which is a big conversation in the industry. Julia, what are we up against?
This was a really hard one to think about how I could succinctly say why this is such an important topic. I think sustainability is bandied around, but it really means something. To put it in context, online advertising consumption contributes to around, I think it's between 10 and 20% of the total internet infrastructure's energy consumption. So take a minute for that. That's 10 to 20%. So our industry is having a significant impact. But this podcast is always about workplace culture. And what's more significant is over half of all companies, people who are working for those, it really matters to them that their company takes sustainability and anything to do with their environmental issues and causes seriously. So this is something that if you do good, as a company, you will bring on good talent that supports you in doing that. And as an industry, as a collective, we can make a real change. But that's just my opinion. And my opinion matters zilch compared to who we have on with us today. So Gabby, I'm so happy to have you here because that's just my view on it. But you're the expert and we're really going to get under the hood about what you think and also really good advice to give out to companies and to people and to the industry as to what we can do. But I'm going to start. I'd love to know, just Gabby, tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are now, and especially I think with that slant of how you became so involved in sustainability.
Sure, absolutely. And first of all, very nice to be here.
Good to have you here.
Speak to the both of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome here.
I think my journey, both in advertising and sustainability within media and advertising, started at the same time as I joined SeenThis, which was now soon to be 3 years ago. So I have a background. I used to work at McKinsey Company, and then as part of my work there, I encountered SeenThis and sort of saw the journey that they were on. And realized that, okay, this is something really cool and this is something I want to take part in.
Definitely.
So you're one of those people that is in that I take it seriously with the company I work for and I take their values as important to my working there.
Definitely. SeenThis is doing something really amazing, both when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to performance and quality and pushing new barriers of what you can do within advertising overall, but then also as an employee and part of the company, the cultural values and the company's values are very important too.
I'm going to jump on something because I started this by citing that figure, that 10 to 20% that online advertising, you know, our baby, our industry, what we live and breathe every day, that we're contributing to the total internet infrastructure and energy consumption. Can you just tell us a bit more about the how and the why of that?
Of how internet is driving emissions?
Yeah, I think so, because I think otherwise it can
just feel so big, doesn't it, when you say the internet?
Yeah, it does, right?
So we produce 10 to 20% of the total infrastructure's consumption of the total internet. I think it's words, and I think this is where a lot of people find it hard and don't don't want to talk about it because they're worried about saying the wrong thing. So I'm hoping you can put some clarity on that.
No, definitely. And I think that's also where we started a little bit 3 years ago as well, when we started to look into this. Because SeenThis, the core of what we do is actually, we do video streaming and display. And we stream instead of the conventional way where you download. So you download the entire thing. We only stream the packages that you need. And that was initially developed for the purpose of delivering high quality instantly, but as a byproduct of that, it also requires less data. So what we did 3 years ago was the same as sort of understanding, okay, but what is the link here between internet and emissions, and what is the link here between internet and data and emissions? Mm-hmm. Because at that point in time, it's been researched quite a bit, but it was not really known to the industry this is actually a problem. It's essentially comes down to the fact that when we send a video, or when we send a static, or when we send an ad of any kind, we're using the internet.
Yeah, everything has a cost.
Exactly, right. And what I didn't realize at that point was that the amount of emissions that it actually drives. So internet as a whole stands for between 2 and 4% of the total emissions.
Wow.
So as a comparison, you have the entire aviation industry, which is 2%.
No way.
So it's more than entire aviation industry.
More than planes. Well, I feel less guilty booking up my holidays now at the very least, although it's not saying a whole lot.
Crack on with the journey to Florida, Kasey. You're all right.
Yeah, that's amazing. But when we think about then big stats like that, big numbers, that we're producing more carbon emissions than air traffic, with the rise then of programmatic, we now also are starting to factor in emissions that are going across trillions of different ad auctions that are taking place every single day. From where you're sat, measuring, evaluating, and really getting under the hood of everything, do you see things as progressively getting worse, or do you see a greener future? Do you see progress?
I think both at the same time, right? Because as you say, you have one force, which is we have the rise of the programmatic system, right? And we also have the rise of, or explosion of data that's connected to delivering video and images online. So every year, data transfer increased by 20%. So in that regard, it's not looking very good, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately.
There is also a very positive way in that, well, up until like 2 years ago, the industry hasn't really looked into this, or hasn't really tried to take measures. And now we are seeing that. There's a tremendous impact, or a tremendous difference about the conversations and the actions in the companies 2 years ago versus it is now. And actually what we're trying to do, and what we also see in other actors trying to do, is, okay, but how can we optimize what we do and just remove a lot of waste?
Yeah.
So for example, and this comes both when it comes to the programmatic ecosystem and when it comes to creative delivery, that actually you don't need to send that much data to get the business outcome. You don't need to send that much data to get the quality that you want, or loading instantly that you want. And a lot of that can be progressed by just being smarter if and how we send data, or if and how we do auctions.
That's interesting. So you mentioned earlier that when SeenThis originally realized the reduced carbon emissions that come with streaming as opposed to downloading their ad units, is there anything else that SeenThis are doing to go green? Is it just that there's this fabulous byproduct, it's low emissions, and we're rolling with it? Or is there anything else that you guys are trying to lead some of the industry with to make sure that everyone's receiving the message?
I would say we're doing three parts. So we're about reducing our own negative impact, optimizing the positive impact, and also in the meantime helping the industry sort of understand and get a grasp of how to think and work with sustainability. And if we take the middle part, which is around increasing our positive impact, it is exactly what you talked about, the product that we have. So a lot of the handprint is typically what you talk about when you want to create a positive change in the world beyond your own emissions. That has to do a lot with the investments in the product. And today, you can see up to 40% reduction by streaming.
Wow.
But that is by no means done, right? Like there's a lot of more optimizations we can do to the product and like further reduce that. And we have released quite a few updates to our technology, for example, segment by segment optimizations, where like you look at the creative and you just like squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, so you get the same high quality and the same instant loading, but you reduce it even further.
Just tiny.
Then, of course, we also look into our own footprint as a whole, and have signed up to or set a target that has been approved by SBTi, and then we're working on that in parallel, right, as well.
I think this is really interesting though, because you're doing all this great stuff, and I always believe in the notion that you at the end of the day you can't control other people's actions. You can only be responsible for your own. So taking that wider, I can only be responsible for the digital voices, actions, and where we take our efforts on sustainability. But every company should feel that larger responsibility. You've highlighted some areas where SeenThis has taken action on what they can do.
Yeah.
For other companies, I'm always a bit concerned because I think a lot of companies are like, hang on one sec, we want to be really creative. We want to create we're pushing the boundaries on creative formats, on extensive data. We're heavily led on data. It can't all be done. In order to achieve this, the end result, our hands are tied. I don't think that's the case, but I'm hoping you as the expert can explain why, and maybe what can other companies, and this is very broad brush, but what can other companies do?
First, you have to be aware about the problem. And I think for a long time, and still today, the industries, like there's a huge educational part in what is actually our footprint, where does it come from, what is the big sources of emissions, and where should we start to tackle. And then the next phase is around start to measure it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's actually better if you do what is big and what is big and what is small, so you can start prioritizing, but so you don't get caught up in the nitty-gritty details of getting it exactly right.
Maybe it's going after some easy wins first, things you can do.
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's where I think we see a lot of companies going now when we start coming into what actually matters, right? Which is taking actions and actually reducing their footprint.
Yeah,
it is a lot to do with actually looking for vendors. And looking for partners and see, okay, first and foremost, what can you do with your own footprint? And then also looking to partners and say, okay, what kind of offerings are out there? And how can I collectively with industry sort of help reduce my footprint and work on the reduction part?
This feeds into a really important topic to mention when we think about sustainability. I feel like I'm saying a swear word at you when I say this right now, Gabrielle.
Kasey doesn't swear, so I'm on tenterhooks now. Go on, Kasey.
Greenwashing. So when we talk about the low-hanging fruit, the superficial efforts towards sustainability or targets or whatever's out there, greenwashing has been a real issue, and we've seen some companies that have been called out.
They got it so wrong.
So wrong.
God.
How would you advise companies to avoid greenwashing? Why do you think this happens so often?
I think it comes down to two parts. One is, again, education about sustainability knowledge, basically, right? Like a lot of the greenwashing is not intentional. But rather that you didn't know you were not supposed to talk about it in that way.
Right. They mean well sometimes.
Exactly. You mean well, but it ends up in the wrong way. And there's so many examples of this. The problem here is also it comes back and haunts you a little bit later. There was a case in Sweden where you had a dairy producer saying that they were, I think they said they were carbon neutral. And then 5 years later, they were convicted in court. Convicted maybe is not the right term, but they were found guilty of greenwashing.
Oof.
So you really need to be well versed on how should we talk about this?
Yeah, when you make big claims.
The problem is when you start, rather than focusing on actual climate change, you start to focus on fulfilling the reporting guidelines, or you start doing it for only business purposes. Then it's easy to get lost, right?
Yeah.
If we come back to what is the real thing we're trying to do here, which is actually improving the climate, or like reducing emissions for climate purposes, right? It's easier to stay on the right line.
Right.
But then on the flip side, I think there's also a danger in the opposite part, because we talk a lot about greenwashing, but there's also the flip side of greenhushing, which is almost equally as bad, right? Where companies, you get so afraid of talking about anything, because you're so afraid about the scrutiny, that you refrain to talk about your advancements and your footprint, which could actually serve as really great examples to drive the industry forward, right?
I've never heard the term greenhushing.
Greenhushing, heard it here first.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabby, for that. We love that. But it is a big threat. And obviously we work at the front end of communications as a PR agency, and we're always advising our clients that don't just do it for the sake of it. Don't jump on the International Women's Day unless you absolutely have a clear equal gender pay parity. Thank you, Kasey. And it's very important. It's not just sustainability. It's not just for Christmas. It's all year round. Don't just say you do it. But I equally agree. People are so nervous about being trashed on. I'm not going to name the platforms, but certain platforms. And I think that's just the last thing we want. But I think they've just got to be clear on exactly, if they're doing it with good intentions and it's based on fact and they really are delivering it, then I think you shouldn't be mindful, should you? I'm wondering in what instance they wouldn't feel comfortable about saying what they're achieving.
Just think you put yourself at risk either way. If you're putting it out there publicly, someone could always come along and say, well, that's not enough,
but you're a car manufacturer, or
poke holes in it, or
I suppose it's a bit like with electric car. I drive an electric car, but it's obviously built with a lithium battery, which I believe uses up the equivalent of I'd be driving it for 100 years. I can't think. I'm going to get this wrong, but you'd have to drive it for a certain amount of time in order to be net zero. So there's two sides to everything, but at the same time, it does reduce emissions. It does reduce pollution. So it's like quid pro quo, isn't it?
Even food stuff. When you think about dairy milk versus like almond milk, almonds are very unsustainable to grow in certain places, but is that better off because of the carbon emissions that cows let out? Like you never fully know. You can never 100% win. So I guess that's why greenhushing is people just thinking there's always going to be a flip side, like you said, Gabrielle.
Definitely. Well, that's made me think. So, the B Corp certification, a part of me is a little bit cynical going, oh goodness, is it just a badge that people are going through the motions, getting the badge for again, the cynic in me, for branding purposes, for PR, for publicity? How much value do you put on that? And do you think it is something that's really important and that you have to jump? What's your experience of B Corp certification? Do you have to jump through so many hoops that those that do receive it have worked for it?
I'm somewhat familiar with the B Corp, but we're not signed up, or we're not part of it as of yet, at least. But if I take something maybe similar but not the same at all, which is SBTI and like basically kind of validations and marks that you sign up to, I do see that there is definitely a benefit with them. It's not, but again, it comes back to that it's not about that should be the end goal, but it helps. It can help with credibility and help with, as you say, like the confusion that might exist in from clients and from users and from customers, and try to understand what is what is good and what is not, right? So I think it definitely has its place, but it's important that you don't stop there. But it's part of the process and part of the progress, if you will.
It's an interesting one. I started this by saying 50% of employees are now looking at companies and making decisions on the companies they go to based upon their sustainability values. And if we take that, I wonder if in the future it's going to be, you look at a company based upon their workplace culture, their benefits, their health packages, and their B Corp certification. I wonder if that will go down that route.
I could see it.
Yeah, potentially. But I think it comes back again to, you need to be honest, and you need to do it for, it should not be just a layer that you tick off because of employer branding purposes. It should not be just a layer that you tick off because then you might sell more of your product. It should be because like sustainability should come from that you actually want to do a change. But with that said, I think it's very interesting to see now. I don't know if you read the report from McKinsey, now it was a year ago or so, that we're actually starting to see a shift where up until now, sustainability efforts were seen as cost and risk mitigation. Whereas of now, we see a paradigm shift in that it's actually more seen as a value creation. So it can go more hand in hand, where companies that lean in and companies that just don't wait for the regulations to come and then you will do something, and you rather lean in. There's a real opportunity to both do good for the right reasons and to benefit from it, and your company benefit from it also from ecosystem position, or from claiming a position in the ecosystem, I should say.
That's a win-win-win all around, isn't it?
A triple win, you might say.
Triple win.
Exactly. and the moment to do that is now.
Yeah, 100%. I'm curious because obviously we talk about a lot of these actions, and there can be headlines out there that strike fear in people, that give it a sense of urgency. We've seen adoption of sustainability efforts and targets be set, and aggressive ones at that a lot of times. From where you're sat and from the data that you look at and how close you are to this topic, do you ever feel green guilt? Do you think I'm not doing enough, or, just impending doom a little bit, I guess, over all of it?
Oh yeah, are we doing enough?
Yeah, I definitely get it. But is there anything that you've experienced where you think, well, I know that we're making strides in this, and we can reduce some of those feelings of anxiety and impending doom and focus on genuine change and the good stuff and good work that people are doing everywhere? I
mean, it's definitely daunting, right? When you see the reports that are released on where we are at and how far off we are from actually meeting the 2030 target. It's not you go home and feel, oh, this is great, it's going fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But I think then you feel that, and then you go back to work, and then I feel at least very positive and good about both what our company is doing and how we help through streaming, and what we can do to help clients actually reduce their footprint. And I also feel very happy about that it's not only us driving this change in the industry. You have all these companies now, or organizations like Net Zero, like Scope 3, like Impact Plus, like Good Loop, like IAB, and now I've forgot a lot of them, right? And all the media agencies. So I really know it doesn't feel fantastic where we are, but I see the change happening
and the steps in the right direction. And I think that we're always very pro on this, is talking about, look, it is what it is, and there are things that aren't perfect, but you have to just take control and do what you can do. So in the nature of that, what's the 5 most I'm putting you on the spot here with 5. Go for 3.
Yeah.
3 top most important things that an individual and a company could do to make those steps and make changes for sustainability. Let's go with company, because let's start with company. See what you hit with.
I feel like you're broken a record here a little bit because I'm coming back to the same things.
I think if they're the right things, I honestly think it needs do saying.
Yeah.
In a way, we just got to keep banging that drum. Go for it, Gabby.
Because I guess in one sense it's hard and it's simple at the same time, right? One is educating not just your sustainability department or having a sustainability department, but actually having the entire organization knowledgeable about sustainability, what that means for your company and relates to your company, and how to think about it and how to talk about it. Then next step is to get a grasp of your footprint. Doesn't have to be the nitty-gritty details, just have to be the big and small, and then you work gradually in improving that, because you want to come to the next step, which is actually reduction. And it needs to be reduction. Offsetting, as I'm sure you've heard, there's a lot of controversy around that. And it's not necessarily a bad thing if you do it at the end, but you need to start with reduction. You can never be done or think that you're done until you reach true zero from reducing alone.
Love it. Educate, measure, reduce.
Got it.
The secret sauce. Yeah.
I'm curious to know, Gabby, what sustainability changes do you want to see in the next 12 months worldwide? If we were to come back and have another episode of Off Record On Point with you and said, what's the biggest thing you've seen happen this year? What would you want it to be?
I want to see reduction, actual change, actual reduction. We have as an industry come to a point now where we have focused on a lot of education, a lot of measuring, and that's good. But we won't have an impact on the environment until we reduce. So we need to start reduce, and we need to start doing it now.
That's what we need to do. That's the actions. But I think there's a lot of people that have done good already. So we decided in the quick fire round to do Gabrielle's awards. And this is a chance for you to give trophies and hand out to people and company who have shown real successes in sustainable practices, initiatives. So I'm going to hit you with 7 quick fire question. Quick fire.
Whoa.
Incredible.
Gabby's awards going to take off.
Fantastic.
Start selling seats for the awards show.
I feel like we need an intro song for it.
Da, da, da. Okay, first up. Most deserving unsung hero.
Yeah, I think I want to give that to a lot of the researchers here. Like, we forget that a lot of the movement and the change that we see now is based upon researchers that have dedicated more or less their entire lives to this. There is Anders André and Jens Malmodin and a selection of 10 individuals that really push the agenda here. So I think they come from Chalmers, KTH, Stanford, Cambridge, and so forth. So I think we forget about them, but we use a lot of their work in what we're doing here.
Fabulous.
Shout out to the researchers. The opposite of green hush, green shout. Who's the most vocal about sustainability?
I think this award could be handed out to so many different organizations and companies. I think
I've got to push you on this. You can only have one.
Only one.
We can have a highly commended.
Oh, you're too soft. Go on.
Yeah, no, but I think Net Zero is one, for example. I think they're doing a fantastic job in educating and driving change here.
Fabulous.
Biggest influencer. This is number 3. Set up on our awards.
Oh.
But now I want to sort of mention a few, because otherwise we'll forget about it, right?
Go on, you can have a few.
Good Loop, I think they're fantastic.
Yes.
We have IAB Tech Lab. They're doing a great job. SRI and France in general they are really fantastic in driving this agenda. Scope 3 and a lot of I've forgotten a bunch now.
It's difficult when you put on the stage with your trophy in hand.
You want to have like a lot of different trophies. You should create a lot of different trophies here, because
I seriously think this is going to take off.
There are a lot of trophies to give out.
They all deserve their flowers for their efforts. That's for sure.
They do. So next one, most unexpected idea that's shone a light on sustainability.
There was one campaign, I actually haven't seen it, but I heard about it a couple of years ago by a company called Oatly in Sweden.
Oh, I love Oatly.
We love Oatly.
Yeah.
And we love their campaigns. I've reviewed them on Advertisers Watching Ads, which is Tom Ollerton's podcast. It's just brilliant. Love it.
But they did an ad that said, this was a couple of years ago, but they did an ad that said, something in the line with, we are net zero, and to get there we had to cheat, which basically says that, you know, we're so far from being there and we need to collectively work on this, because it's almost impossible to be net zero today. And it's
got it. Oh, I love it.
Always with the truth. Right. So next one, 3 to go. Best sustainability initiative that will last.
Ooh.
Ooh.
SBTI is actually really good.
SBTI?
Because it's connected also to the European Union, and it's sort of taking it from very rigid and sometimes hard to understand processes to maybe a little bit simpler for active input into practice.
Nice.
Lovely. So best company for sustainability practices. The award goes to...
Oh, but here's a bunch. Can I give it to the entire industry? Because I
love that.
Okay, maybe it took a little bit of time before we actually started to take action, but now we have really taken action really quickly.
The award goes to the entire industry. For all our listeners in the industry, we won.
Go us.
Final one, Rising Star of Sustainability.
Oh, wow. I want to give that to our own sustainability lead, I think, whose name is Simon Johansson.
So Simon Johansson. Oh, he'll love that.
He brings in a lot of experience when it comes to sustainability from the non-digital and non-advertising world, which is fantastic and has really propelled our thinking and the industry thinking, because I said maybe we moved a little bit late, and then we have a lot to learn from other industries that we can bring in.
Go on, Simon! Yay!
Crowd goes mad! Yay! Well done. Oh, Gabby, thank you so much for being put on the spot there and giving out your awards. I honestly think it's got legs, and we could create a whole awards on this.
I agree.
There's been so many things that stood out within today's podcast, and I think my takeaways from this is 4 things, which is number 1, know the why. Why are you doing it? Number 2, do good for the right reasons. Don't get caught out by not. Number 3, focus on actual reduction. Make it count and measure it and show what you've done and be able to measure that success. And the 4th one is don't green hush, green preen. Shout about what you've done and keep shining a light on this, because I think that's the only way we as an industry can keep going. And as you said, Gabby, you've called out our industry as award winning for at least making massive headway and steps forward. So that's my takeaways, and it's been an incredible session. Thank you so much.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gabby. And that is a wrap on this episode. There's obviously still huge ongoing conversations to be had about sustainability, and with education being such a major thing that we talked about today being a huge key, be sure to check out the description for some of those resources to arm yourself with all the knowledge that Gabrielle has shared with us today. Thank you so much for your time,
Thanks,
Gabby.
Gabby. Great to have you here.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Off Record On Point. And that's it. That is a wrap for season 2. It has been an incredible season, just from start to finish, utterly mind-blowing. As always, I'm Julia Linehan.
And I'm Kasey Long. I can't believe season 2 is all wrapped up. Enjoyed the conversation? Reach out and let us know by rating and reviewing on YouTube or your favorite listening platform. And be sure to follow to never miss an update on our future episodes.
And as always, you can stay connected with us at www.thedigitalvoice.co.uk or across all our social platforms. Just look out for The Digital Voice.
Join us again in future for more undercover industry deep dives, all off record, all on point.
That is mic drop. Boom.